situation at Kent State University for the past 3 days got worse today, trying to disperse students from the Commons where an unauthorized rally was being held at noontime. The guard on the perimeter began to use tear gas. The confrontation began when students hurled rocks and insults at the guard. From there, a push across the Commons by the guard. Students ran as they hurled more rocks, and then there was more tear gas. At about 12:30, or a half hour after the rally started, there was an outbreak of firing near Taylor Hall on a hill above the Common. The weapon fire was coming from National Guard rifles, and there are unconfirmed reports of sniper firing. Let's get up there. Soon cries that people had been shot. Much confusion, but the result was 4 persons killed and at least 4 others seriously wounded. For the next 2 hours, students and guardsmen continued to face each other. Insults were hurled. There were no more advances by the guard. Until mid-afternoon, when president of the university put out the word that the university was being closed for the remainder of the week.
I was with Allison when she was shot and killed on Kent State campus. We had made it a point to appear at the rally that was held that afternoon at 12 o'clock to get a little organization for the student movement that was seeming to be disorganized the night before and the day before. And we went there to see some organization take part. We were there in the beginning when they asked us to disperse under martial law, and we stayed in the center of the crowd. The guardsmen lined up in front of us, maybe 100 yards in front of us in single file, shoulder to shoulder, and started marching as they shot tear gas. The gas grenades were thrown back, and they continued marching, and they forced the students over a hill and into a parking lot where the majority of students stood and returned the gas grenades that were being continually fired. It was a continuous confrontation. Gas was shot, it was thrown back. I did see some rocks thrown. And apparently, after a while, the National Guardsmen ran out of gas. And we stood there and we chanted, and the gas just breeded hate, and it breeded indignation. And you couldn't help but feel it when they had gas shooting at you from all sides and making you move back, and you had nowhere to go and breathing gas all the time. And I uttered plenty of curses, and I felt more and more indignation as the gas was coming, and Allison did too. The guardsmen had ran out of gas, and they started marching back apparently to get more gas. And at this time, the crowds moved right in behind them. People were screaming and yelling. People were filled with hate, it appeared. I don't see how anybody couldn't be. These people, the guardsmen, were wearing these gas masks. You couldn't see a human face behind all the green. They were dressed in green, they carried guns, and they wore masks, and you couldn't distinguish it. The crowd was throwing rocks when they ran out of gas. People had been shot, had gas shot at them for quite a while, and they could do nothing but retreat, and they did resort to throwing rocks. They were rocks maybe the size of eggs of baseballs. I didn't see any hits, and I don't know that anybody threw to hit the people, hit the guardsmen directly. I know they must have thrown out of hate and indignation. I can't say what provocated the shooting. The crowd rushed in behind the guardsmen, screaming war whoops as the guardsmen retreated over the hill, marching in formation.
The next thing I remember is, after this was the lieutenant or captain, whoever was the commanding officer right on the scene at this time, who had a handgun and somewhat of a billy club in his hand. He fired a shot into the air at this time, and at that instance, I thought to myself it was a grenade of some type that I hadn't noticed, but I did notice that the sound was much more muffled than than I would have expected from a handgun of that type. And then the next course of events I remember is the guard moving toward us, because they were going, it seemed, back up, later I found out, onto the Commons again. And at this time, as soon as they started to move, we moved back inside of Taylor Hall. in the door, the south east door of Taylor Hall. And I moved then through the corridor and around the back on the balcony, and I was on the balcony on the south balcony at this time. As the guard moved up across the crest of the hill and down toward the Commons. And at this time, I don't recall them turning, but I just recall the firing at this time. And a group of, in my estimation, again, 8 men, which I would say were the same men who got down in the firing position earlier, were doing the firing. And there was one man, which I would say would maybe be the second man in the row, was firing into the air. It seemed like above the other men. The other men seemed to be, the ones I could see, seemed to be firing directly with their guns parallel to the ground, their .30 caliber or their whatever rifles they had. The next thing I remember is this lieutenant captain, whoever the commanding officer was, hitting the men's guns on top to make them stop firing. He was hitting the men's closest to him. He was on the furthest edge away from the building, and he was hitting the men closest to him to make them stop, and then he was reaching across to hitting the gun butts, knocking them to make them stop, it seemed.
What were your responses, sir, to the shooting at Kent?
Well, my responses to the shooting in Kent was simply the fact that the people weren't behaving properly, and apparently they have asked for that sort of thing.
So you think the guard was justified in the shooting?
I do. When you look at this destruction that's been going on here and the stuff as it was thrown at the guards, I think that it was a provocation to cause the guards to do such a thing.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
I'll tell you, the National Guard had no training to take care of any demonstration. What they should have done, they should have brought in the Highway Patrol, which has education, you know what I mean, to take care of anything like that. In the first place, they didn't need no National Guard up there.
You don't think that the students had to have the guard here or the campus?
That's what started it.
Where do you put the blame, sir?
I put the blame on the National Guard and on the governor. The governor is to blame.
Governor Rhodes?
Right. He's to blame because he ordered the guards in there. The guards shouldn't have never showed up. If they hadn't showed up, there wouldn't have been this trouble.
In regards to the shooting at Kent State, do you think it was justified, or do you think that it was justified that the National Guard be called in on it?
No, I think it was a tragedy that they had to call them in. More yet, was a justification on the part of the students' act. I'm 100% for, the students. I think they have every right to dissent, to demonstrate or what have you. And I'm fully in accord with their action against the wall, sitting on.
Sunday, just driving around town and seeing these guys standing on a corner. I don't know what they were supposed to be doing, but there they were. Sunday night, the helicopters flying over the apartment, and the children were upset, and it seemed like about every minute and a half, the helicopter was directly overhead, very low. The building was shaking. This sort of thing helped arouse students, just as Rhodes' statements aroused students. I mean, again, the idea that there was going to be a show of strength, that these protesters, these communists, these subversive types were going to be shown, who's in command. It was this kind of talk that I think caused students in a way to be there and to be as persistent in staying there around that commons as they did. That was one of the reasons I was there, surely.
Do you think that the shooting of Kent, the students at Kent, was justified, sir?
Under the stress and strain, I believe both sides were in such a mood that anything could happen, and I think that's what happened, was the shooting because of the strain on both sides.
Would you put the blame then on the governor for having called the guard in the first place?
No, I think the whole fault lies in the administration of the college itself. I think that if the students were allowed to demonstrate peacefully and yet in order, I think everything had been all right. But I think using force on both sides, and some reports that I've heard, both sides were using force.
People in the downtown section of Kent were more than happy to have the National Guard here. We feel that some of our neighbors, the police, the firemen, families would be without providers now if the National Guard hadn't been here. We think they did a tremendous job. Our hearts go out to the parents of these 4 students, but we feel that the citizens of Kent are just as precious to their families as the students in this town.
Carol has a son in Vietnam, too, and he's over there fighting, and we're fighting for our welfare. And my husband happens to be a fireman, and he's been gone for 3 days and 3 nights. His life was in danger as much as the students up there. Also, the students didn't obey. They were told to disperse. They didn't disperse, backed up those National Guards. What could you do?
So in a sense, then, you feel that the shooting was justified?
No, not that way. I mean, we don't want to see anybody get hurt. But the students, they want to run our country. How can they run our country when they can't even obey rules?
Is that it was a nice night out, a nice Friday evening, and in the area that the townspeople call the Strip, along where all the bars are, there are always a number of people sitting on the sidewalks, standing, milling around for one reason or another. And at one point, some person started to chant. I believe the chant was "Fuck Nixon." And as the chanting increased, people started running out of the bars. There were so many people they couldn't fit on the sidewalk anymore. People spilled out onto the street. And I have no idea who made the first move, but as the crowd increased and they spread out in area, and on one periphery, a rock was thrown through a window. And this was met with cheers and increased chanting, and the people en masse moved down towards the square of town. It's interesting to note that though this was a spontaneous thing, that the kids, at least the kids that were throwing the rocks through the windows, were very selective in what windows were hit. Stores that the kids consider their stores, that are run by students, by young people, by freaks, by long hairs, whatever you care to call them, were not hit. It was the banks, the realtors, the savings and loan companies, these kind of establishments that were hit. Police were in on the thing Sunday night. The police are doing most of the splitting up. Of course, the presence of the guard is very sobering because they did have, they're holding their rifles quite low, and they all had bayonets. And that did a lot to hold things down, just by the very fact that they were there. The significant portion of Sunday night occurred after the kids reached the corner of Lincoln and Main Street, and several hundred sat down in the street, and there were several hundred more on the front grounds of the campus. And it was a strange thing. The cross-section of students that all 4 of these days have involved is incredible. I can't tell you exactly what there is at the basis of the camaraderie between all the students. They're out there for many different reasons at any given time. But, there has to be something in common, whether it's just age or whatever it is. I haven't been able to decide yet. But a good number of students were there because they wanted to know what the hell was going on. I mean, by this time, they were sick of fighting for the most part. They didn't have any idea what was happening. There was no communication, and the kids requested, or I suppose they demanded, that someone come down and talk to them. The mayor of the city, President White, if possible, or another member of the school administration. And we told the authorities that we weren't going to move out of the street. We weren't going to move until we did, in fact, get to talk to someone. Now, someone got up, and no one that I've talked to is sure who this person was, but we do know for sure that he was using the police PA system off of the car. Got up and said, that we have contacted the mayor. He'll be down within a half hour to talk to you kids. Oh, we're trying to get a hold of someone from the university. We said, well, that's nice. Now, our next demand is that we want the troops off campus. And he left for a while. He came back and made the announcement that the commander of the National Guard assures me that the National Guard will be pulled off of campus in the event that the kids get out of the streets and back onto campus. They're going to switch positions, in other words. The kids said, yeah, that's cool. That's what we want at this point anyhow. The kids got up out of the street. We were in a very small area on front campus, and because of positions that the Guard and Police had taken up, we were covered and surrounded on three sides, with their only exit being south up Lincoln Street. At this point, the National Guard began to move. People assumed that they were following orders to move off campus, but within a few seconds it became apparent that they weren't. They had their bayonets lowered. They were marching across campus, and the three groups, two groups of National Guardsmen on either side, and the police at one end were coming in to form a group and shot tear gas and chased the kids up Lincoln Street. Now, this was the most significant thing up to this time, because a lot of the kids were, well, left liberal. I don't know, maybe they were radical, but up till this point, their actions hadn't caught up with their heads. That night, I saw hundreds of peace signs turn to fists.
My name is James Porter, and I am a student at Kent, and I live in College Towers. And Monday afternoon, I was on my way back from a class which was canceled in University Auditorium, and I was standing by Taylor Hall. We couldn't move. I was afraid to move. I was standing there. I heard shots. Whether there were snipers or not, I don't know. I saw people falling. I fell. I didn't want to be shot. The shooting stopped. I stood up. About 35 feet away from me, there was a girl who was shot in the neck. I stood and watched her die. That's all I know. That's all I want to know now.
The guard was crouching, ready to shoot at us, and we'd realized that they'd run out of tear gas. They stood there for a moment, and then they all got up again and started moving back up the hill. The students followed, many students at a very close distance. Some of the students were like throwing rocks, but there were very few rocks thrown, and they didn't reach the guard. When the guard reached the top of the hill, some students were as close as 15 or 20 feet in back of the guard. At the time they reached the top of the hill, they stopped, suddenly turned and fired. I was about 45 feet down the hill and started running. Most people were screaming that it was blanks. But as I hit the ground in the right about the practice football field, I saw one person fall in front of me that spun, and blood was spurting out of his shoulder and fell. The shooting stopped. The guard turned around and marched down the hill, and I ran up to aid the student that had fallen. I was there for about 2 or 3 minutes trying to stop his bleeding. He had been shot all the way through the left shoulder, and I was watching by the parking gate where there was another student lying flat on the ground. I ran over to there. My brother was there and said he was dead, and ran back to the student that I'd been caring for. I was sitting by that student holding his shoulder as about 7 National Guardsmen walked up to the dead body by the parking gate and were questioning the students and looking at the body. The students yelled for the guard to get the fuck out of there, to move away. They did, and they started to walk away. One of the guardsmen turned, had his gun by his side, like like this and fired another shot by the group of students at this dead body. After that, we waited for the ambulances to come and carried the wounded up onto the hill and got them ready for the ambulances.
Do you know anything about a sniper fire?
I never heard any sniper fire. The only firing that I heard was from the National Guard.
Was there any order to shoot?
I didn't see any order to shoot, and I never saw any leader. Other people say they saw a lieutenant who had a .45.
Student.
When they reached the top of the hill, they all turned at once, and his hand was up in the air with the black nightstick in it, and he dropped his arm and he began to fire. I hit the ground as quickly as possible, and I just laid there and hugged the ground until the firing was over. Felt bullets thud around me. A piece of concrete hit me in the arm. I guess it was taken up out of the sidewalk by a ricocheting bullet. As soon as the firing stopped, I looked up, and the National Guardsmen had turned and were going quickly down the hill. They weren't even stopping to look and see if they'd hurt anyone. And everyone was screaming. He's hit. She's hit. Just could not believe that such a thing had happened. I must say I never saw or heard a sniper's bullet fired. All I saw was that command, that dropping of his arm, and I saw him fire. We went back down the hill, many of us, and sat down and just sat there. Many people were so angry they couldn't even speak. Dr. Frank finally came over to talk to the students with a bullhorn after some other professors had spoken. And he was nearly overcome with grief by the time he finished talking. Basically what he said was, please people, please leave this hillside. Please don't demonstrate. Don't harass these guardsmen anymore because they're murderers. We've seen what they can do and they might do it again. Please go home. I have military experience, and I was in the service for 2 years, and I know, I could easily identify the weapons that they were carrying and the ranks of the people there. And that's also why that makes me think that was a command to fire, because that's not so unfamiliar. When there's a lot of noise around, you don't use a verbal command. You use a visual command, like the dropping of the arm.
Are you a member of the National Guard?
Yes, I am.
And were you at Kent State on the day of the shooting?
Yes, I was.
Can you describe what took place to the best of your ability?
Well, I saw thousands of students. The majority of them were spectators from what I could see. I was standing there watching myself. I wasn't armed with a rifle, and I wasn't involved in the shooting, so I was more or less an outside observer. I saw a lot of tear gas being thrown, and the students threw it back, and then the guard threw it at the students.
Were the students throwing things at the guard?
I believe they had some sticks that I saw them picking around in the dirt, picking up stones out of the dirt, and they had some sticks from the shade trees.
Did you see them, any of them with weapons or bricks or anything?
No, I didn't see any bricks or spikes. Now, this is from my point of view. I didn't see any bricks or spikes.
Right. Now, when the guard went up and you saw them kneel and shoot, did you see any order to shoot?
There was so much chaos, I don't think there was an order. It's hard to tell. Those men were wearing gas masks, and through a gas mask you can't hear anything. There was a lot of screaming and a lot of hollering and yelling. I heard one shot, and then two, and then a barrage of shots.
Okay. Did you see any sniper or hear any sniper fire before the guard fired?
Well, I didn't see any sniper fire, nor I heard one shot fired, and then I heard two fired, and then I heard a barrage of fire. And
now, you mentioned something earlier about a lot of the guardsmen had their own personal guns, small guns. Can you describe that?
Well, several of the officers carry personal weapons with them, and then some of the other men had personal sidearms because we were short on weapons.
What were your responses to the shootings at Kent, sir?
Deep sympathy, but I feel the blame has been laid in the wrong place.
Where do you feel it should be?
I think professional agitation with the murders of the 4 students, not the National Guard. The people that made the comments to the students, they only have blanks. This is what led to trouble.
In other words, you feel there were outside agitators brought in?
I feel it. I wish I could prove it. I feel it. The stuff that started Friday night, it developed too quickly from the spontaneous. And from eyewitness reports that I have heard of people that were there, what started Friday night was spontaneous. I don't think anybody has said anything otherwise.
So you feel that the Guard was simply defending themselves and shooting the students?
To a point, yes.
Well, I look at Ohio Edison, and I know all the girls were really scared at what was going on.
You had the front windows of the place broken in.
Yes, that's right. And, well, most of the kids in the office and the men in the office feel that the students were in the wrong. And I think a lot of the kids are sticking up for the Guard, and I am personally. The 4 lives that were lost, I think it was a shame that those kids had to die for it. But if there should be some way that something can be done peacefully.
Do you agree with Nixon's policies about putting more troops in Cambodia right now?
No, I don't. And I don't think the Guardsmen do either. And I don't think they really intended to kill those kids. If they're in the National Guard, it must be obvious that they don't want to go to Cambodia either.
Do you think that the governor was justified in sending the Guard into Kent?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's a case where no matter what the cause is or the protest, we have to keep law and order. That's the way I feel about it.
Do you think that the shootings were justified then?
Well, I wish they didn't happen, but when you have violence like this, well, it has to be stopped. That's the way I feel about it.
I'd just like to say that there's a lot of people at fault. That the innocent people are dead now. Number 1, President White was at fault because he didn't close down the school earlier. Number 2, Governor Rhodes was at fault because he called the National Guard in to start with. Number 3, the general was at fault because he allowed them to use ammunition, the orders that were standing, that they were able to fire on the crowd. And
are you a student at Kent?
I am. And 4th, the people involved in the rock throwing and inciting the riot, or inciting the...
I think it was started by the students, and I don't know, there were students or outsiders, but regardless, it was started by them, and I'm sorry about the outcome. But they should do some repenting, too.
Okay, thank you.
Guards, their own people, their own age, would turn around and fire at them. This is unparalleled in American history.
As Mr. Krause himself, near breaking point, said he couldn't hold the individual guardsmen responsible. And indeed, the faculty is aware of the stress under which the guardsmen operated. But the question is, and now I'm broadening it, why is there so much hatred and fear in this country? Why was it felt necessary for these guardsmen to be there? What is the nature of the threat? Who are the enemy?
In essence, there are people in this community who feel threatened by 4 dead children. That's really what it boils down to. It must be said that murder without cause, that killing without cause is murder. You can call it murder in the 1st degree or 2nd degree or 3rd degree. And then you can exempt people who are in military uniform and in time of stress. You can term it whatever you want. It is necessary that whoever was responsible for the injudicious killing of children must in some way, if not by the norms of society, they must in some way be punished. They must in some way be censured.
Within the hour, State Adjutant General S.T. Del Corso said he was convinced the National Guard was justified in firing on the Kent State students today. Vice President Agnew commented tonight on the trouble at Kent State. Here is a late report.
Vice President Agnew, in a Washington speech, blamed the Kent State tragedy on what he called the smug purveyors of mockery and scorn who back revolution with a cultured voice.
In several recent speeches, I've called attention to the grave dangers which accompany the new politics of violence and confrontation, and which have found so much favor on our college campuses. Those dangers were not imaginary. And today at a state college in Ohio, the powder keg exploded, resulting in tragedy that was predictable and avoidable.
Agnew charged many men in power are responsible for a barrage of cynicism.
They can be found in every segment of society that helps to form the opinions of society at large. In the universities, in the media, in government, in the great professions. They are, for the most part, articulate and possessed of that smugness that comes only when one is dogmatically certain of one's essential rightness.
This philosophical, intangible violence, said Agnew, is aimed at tearing down reason, tradition, and respect.
I think it was terrible because I was alone. I was bothered with my neck for about 2 months. So all I had to do was walk the floor. I was up all night. I couldn't sleep.
Do you think that the shooting was justified at Kent?
I don't know, dear. I couldn't explain that.
Do you think it was necessary to have the National Guard called in?
I think it was. It helped out.
Do you think if the students would have been left alone that there wouldn't have been any shooting?
But what did they do it for in the first place? What did they start shooting in the first place for? Why? Now, I heard this might start all over again.
At Kent?
Yeah. The minute these beer gardens going to open.
Subject 22. Where's the number, sir? Generally, when they take pictures, I get a number in front of me.
You live here in Kent, sir?
No, sir.
Where are you from?
I am from Connellsville, Pennsylvania, sir. And
what reason brings you to Kent?
I'm a barber in Connellsville, and we have a radio program daily, and I told them that I'm coming here, if the Lord permits, my day off today. That is from business, not mental. Post-Gazette writer Spriggle from Pittsburgh wrote me up as Pennsylvania Scribble. He died. So the 4 are dead, and I'm still here living and telling about it, and I hope to tell the world that how ungodly and un-American I was treated in Cleveland some time ago and other parts of the country, which is most ungodly and un-American.
Well, I thought, naturally, I thought the shootings were very unfortunate. As far as the National Guard goes, I felt that in view of what happened on Friday night and Saturday afternoon, that certainly something had to be done. I was a little impartial. I think I would have I approved of the Guard being here.
I think that something had to be done about the students. I mean, I don't think it was right that they did what they did. I'm sorry that they had to die. I mean, I didn't want that any more than anybody else did. But I think the National Guard were a little bit scared. And I know the students were, and I know the students weren't throwing pebbles and stones and that stuff. They were throwing pieces of cement and stuff like that. And if I thought my life was in danger like that, I would have done something too.
Have you talked to the guardsmen about that?
My brother-in-law's in the National Guard. He was up here. He wasn't where the shooting was, no, because he was from the Canton group. He wasn't from the National. He said they were throwing cement and they were calling them names and spitting on them. And I don't think anybody can take that.
So you think the governor was justified in calling them?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Brigadier General Robert Canterbury, who is in charge of the Guardsmen on the Kent campus, detailed for reporters today what the Guard's official investigation has actually uncovered thus far. According to Canterbury, there was no order to fire given to the Guardsmen, that they apparently did so on their own. As for a sniper touching off the battle, Canterbury says this is still under investigation. Canterbury was then asked if the Guardsmen had been justified in...
If there were a sniper, however, according to the National Guard manual, it says, snipers should be engaged only on order and by a single selected marksman or firing team. Laying down a barrage accomplishes nothing constructive and endangers the lives of innocent bystanders. That's according to the manual of the National Guard.
I just reached the top of the crest and was just over it when the volley went off. And I saw the smoke from all the guns. And it was very definite that the volley came all at once and there was no hesitation between any of the shots. That is, no shot occurred first and then the rest. The volley was all together. I turned back around, ran around back of Taylor Hall again, where it had just occurred, and I saw a girl lying on the sidewalk with apparently her head had been shot into, and her mouth and jaw was laying on the sidewalk, and blood was running down. And then everything after that was pretty much of a total confusion. Well, another point discounting any sniper theory, besides the countless eyewitnesses that appeared on the news, the idea that Johnson Hall was totally lined with students.
What do you think about the shooting at Kent? Do you think it was justified?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry they didn't kill more.
Really?
Really, sir.
More of the students?
Yes, because they were warned and they knew what was happening and they should have moved out. Well, in a way, I feel sorry for the ones that were hurt, but all those other colleagues, and they're boys and girls, they're certainly not men and women. It would be just another Berkeley, and if that's what it took to break them up, well, then that's what it takes.
So you feel that the governor was right in putting a guard here?
All the way, definitely.
Are you citizens of Kent?
Definitely.
Do you feel that the university could have curtailed the violence if the guard had not been there?
I doubt it very much because my mother was on campus all the time. I teach at a nursery school, and I know a lot of their children because I watch their children.
What do you feel about Nixon's policies in Vietnam and Cambodia? Think we should be?
I'm not that much for Cambodia. Vietnam, yes, because I've lost too many relatives to ever give up on the communists now. I served 13 months there.
Vietnam?
Yeah.
What was his feelings about it?
You mean about Kent State?
No, I mean about just being in Vietnam. Did he think it was justified that we were there?
Yes, sir. He was there all the way, and we've been in Cambodia. This is nothing new. I don't think it is. It's just that they told the people now. Yeah.
You think that the government should tell us what's happening?
Definitely. I think that if they would be more truthful with us, we wouldn't have trouble like this. If they would be truthful with us, stuff like this wouldn't happen. Not all the way. Because those men don't get the government on nothing. And there's just too many people that are too ignorant to accept the truth, and they could never tell them the whole truth.
Is that there are many people in authority, in civilian and military power, and the university itself, who simply say, well, this is very unfortunate, but those people should not have been there. And then we'll get the argument, they knew they shouldn't have been there, and by God, a line must be drawn. They were in defiance. We've had enough of this, etc., etc.
We can't have the buildings burned.
But they were there, and they were a very varied group, and I would guess practically all of them were Kent State University students, American kids. They were not the Viet Cong. They were not armed. And they were not believing that they were in danger of being slaughtered.
What do you want to know? What happened?
Yeah, what happened? To the best of your knowledge, you were right there, an eyewitness to the shooting.
We were running up the hill after them. Some kids were throwing stones. Most of us were screaming. Never expected them to turn around, never expected them to fire on us. It seemed to me like they fired on command, because they all spun around at once, and they went down on their knees and they shot into the crowd, into us. I was about maybe 15 feet from one of the kids who got hit in the shoulder. He fell, and they just kept firing, and they wouldn't let us pick him up. I don't know, maybe it was 35 seconds, maybe 40 seconds. And when it stopped, we ran down the hill, and these kids were laying on the ground, and they were...
But you didn't see any sniper or hear any sniper fire?
No. There wasn't any. Not that we could hear, and I was like maybe 50 feet from the people that... from the guys that were shooting, that came down, that bent down to shoot at us. I didn't hear anything. Maybe it was behind them. We couldn't hear. It was loud. I mean, we were screaming and yelling.
You're a student at Kent.
Yeah.
Do you... How do you think there was any outside agitation of this whole thing?
I don't think so. I think this was spontaneous. I think it was from within. I think it was the students.
In other words, the people who you were around at this rally were all
State students. Kent State students, every one of them. From what I hear, they say that they found somebody, that the FBI has a picture of somebody that they found on campus who's been involved before. I don't know him.
Anything else you want to add to it?
I think it was murder. I really do. I've never been so appalled in my entire life. They could have used any other means. They could have used a hose, a fire hose, and watered us down. They could have used anything. And to carry loaded guns, it's appalling. It really is. I've ripped that off.
I wrote to Nixon on August 1st. Dear Mr. President, this is the first time that I've written to you. Other letters that have been sent to you were in conjunction with other parents who lost their sons and a daughter at Kent State on May 4th, 1970. I have had conversations with your Mr. Ehrlichman, Mr. Garment, and others on the White House staff. In all cases, they have been most sympathetic and have treated me with dignity. This letter that I'm writing to you is a letter from one father who had two daughters to a father who still has two daughters. Mr. President, my daughter was 343 feet away when she was killed by an M1 bullet due to a conscious, deliberate act of some Ohio Guardsmen. This militia man did not fire at the Teamsters when the militia was being attacked and shot at by strikers in Ohio just a few days earlier. Mr. President, we and I, include myself, have developed so many phobias against our young people that a hatred has been engendered which is destroying the cohesiveness of which I believe you and I have been proud of in our country. I have been advising all young people to work within the system to change or reestablish what our forefathers gave to us. I can assure you it has been most difficult for me to keep saying that when at every turn I have taken in my actions to eliminate the shadows of the Kent State killing, I have been thwarted. The youngsters and others who signed a petition which was presented to Mr. Garment feel that it was just another futile gesture. 9 months to answer a serious and noble action is an awfully long time, Mr. President, and they still do not know if they have an answer. Could you possibly make certain that they get an answer, yes or no? Mr. President, you were trained as a lawyer. I am not knowledgeable in the law. I believe it is improper and illegal to deprive a person of due process of law. This happened to my daughter Allison. She was executed. I recently was leafing through a book called The Sacred Book of the Jews, specifically on page 237. Some excerpts read, "Criminals shall not be executed without due process of law. Judges must judge righteously between a man and his brother and a stranger. Justice must be impartial. Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor favor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge. Witnesses must be questioned carefully and evidence gathered diligently." And the section on punishment and indemnities, "For injuring man committing a crime during daylight, self-defense cannot be offered." Mr. President, there is no substitute for justice in our democracy, and if I were to remain silent in the situation I find myself in, then I would have completely failed not only my dead daughter, but also my remaining child. I appeal to you as President to personally review the file. And please, sir, there were more laws broken than conspiracy at Kent State. The reason I say this is every time I've talked to the Justice Department, they state there is no evidence of conspiracy. My daughter was killed and did not receive due process of law, which I believe is deprivation of civil rights. Please let me hear from you. Sincerely, Dr. S. Krause. This poem here was written by Peter Davies who I got to know after my daughter was killed at Kent State. And this poem, what was it he called this, Doris? Yes, Song of Allison, that's it. Yeah. You out there, you patriots of silence, what do you know of me? I who lie in this lonely place beneath the soil, cold as the death I died, for no reason or cause except your hatred. Why, oh why? If I could come to you whole and let you see me, touch me, know me, would you then weep for me, you silent patriots? Can you weep, or has hatred so consumed your angry hearts? I cry out to you from eternity. Do you hear me? Do you hear the mournful song of a distant bird? The soft and gentle flutter of her wounded wings? Or are you so made of stone and steel no dart of love could pierce the armor of your frozen hearts? Come then and mock me in my grave and heap scorn upon me. Oh, how I do pity you. I pity your poor stunted humanity that hates me for dying, and in dying this death, rejoices in the killing. I pity you for not knowing what this death I died shall mean for you tomorrow. Ah, you dare not come despite your hate. You cannot face to face with me. Oh no, the shame too great. Then go wave your pretty flags to marching muscles, and leave me with those that love me. They are few but ever true, and constant as the sun. Go preach your nonsense to the dumb and lead the world astray, seeing in your blindness and hearing in your deafness. Go preach your hate, but mark me well. The day will surely come when I and others shall arise and bring to all of you love and peace.